Welcome to another chat with Tim. We've been just doing a little series on the double binds that people face in recovery. And what it's based on is a child comes into the world with these very good instincts around connection, authenticity, trust, love. But in a complex trauma family, those very good instincts get punished, they get shut down, they get hurt because of using them. And so the child has to adapt, and they develop adaptations that enable them to survive that seem to work really, really well. And so they go, okay, this is the right way to live. And then they go into adult life and all of a sudden not trusting anybody, not being authentic, not connecting in genuine, vulnerable ways. All of a sudden their relationships aren't working, their family's falling apart, and they go, these adaptations that help me survive are now maladaptations. And so they go into recovery, and what they are told is to be healthy, you have to be authentic, you have to connect, you have to learn to trust. And the very things that they had good instincts on that they had to give up, now they're being told that they have to do. But it puts them in a double bind because to get healthy now triggers in them, if I'm authentic, I'm going to get hurt. If I connect, I'm going to get rejected. If people see the real me, they're going to reject me and abandon me. If I start trusting people, I'm going to get let down and hurt. And so it's like, but if I stay with the old tools, I hurt others around me and I hurt myself. But if I go to new healthy tools, I fear I'm going to get hurt. And they feel trapped, they feel caught. And so the very things they had to do to survive now aren't working, but to get healthy comes into conflict with these old tools and beliefs. And so there's this war that goes on inside of them that is very, very difficult to resolve, because if they give into the one, then they know they failed in not becoming healthy. If they choose to get healthy, then it feels like they are going to fail and all the bad things are going to happen. This is a reality for people in recovery, is you got to work through double binds. And so we're listing 20 common double binds that people face in recovery. We've covered 10, hope to get through 5 more today. So the next one is the hope double bind, or feeling a double bind around hoping. So if you think of this core conflict inside of a person coming out of complex trauma, is that every time they got their hopes up as a child, that they would get loved this time, they get validated this time, they would be able to connect this time, their needs would get met this time, they wouldn't get hurt this time, dad would finally love them and be proud of them, their hopes got dashed. And after a while, after trying every option to get respect, to get their needs met, to get love, and it wasn't fulfilled, it didn't happen, they gave up hoping. And to them, hope was a bad thing. Hope always led to pain, to disappointment, and it was just a terrible thing. And so now they come into adult life and they go through life pessimistic, never get your hopes up. They sabotage good things. And for a while, they're kind of proud of that kind of thing. But they get to a point where they realize, I'm never going to allow anything good to happen to me. I'm never going to allow change, growth, or progress, because that will require getting my hopes up, and I won't do that. So basically, I'm confining myself to a prison that's familiar, but it's full of pain, it's full of emptiness. But I don't want to get out of that, because that would mean getting my hopes up. And they feel this double bind. I want to hope, but I don't want to hope, because hope is scary. Hope always leads to problems. And so as soon as they have good things start to happen, they hear these voices in their head. Just wait, the other shoe's about to drop. Or just wait, whenever something good happens, something bad always follows. And it's just so loud in their head and so scary that they then sabotage good stuff over and over again. So how do you help a person through this double bind? So what I tell people often is, I've been around this field a long time. I know there's evidence for hope. I know there's scientific evidence for hope. I know there's evidence from experience for hope. So if you got to piggyback on my hope for a while because you're afraid to hope, I have hope. But I want you to base hope not on feelings, but on evidence. And so if you listen to other people that have tried this tool and it's made a positive difference, and there's all kinds of evidence, anecdotal evidence from all the experiences of people you've listened to, then try that one tool. So just exercise hope in that one area. I'm not asking you to exercise hope across the board. I'm saying let's start with small steps and exercise hope based on evidence in one area. And if it proves to be, hey, that worked, my hope was founded on evidence, it wasn't misled, it didn't lead to disaster like I feared, then you can build off of that gradually until you're able to start to realistically hope again, because now it's based on evidence. So again, this is such an important double bind for people to work through. The next one is the identity double bind. So the double bind around the identities that people develop in complex trauma. Take, for example, the person who their identity in complex trauma has been, they've survived by being a tough guy. They were angry, they beat everybody up, became kind of super strong, athletic, and a fighter. Everybody was afraid of them, and that was their identity. Now they come into recovery and they go, I don't want to be that person anymore, but that person got respect. That person was feared. That person people looked up to. If I don't have that identity and I become this vulnerable, weak person, will people respect me? If I become a genuine, empathetic, caring human who's genuinely loving, will people respect me? It's a scary thing. They feel caught in a double bind. I don't want to continue to be this tough guy, but I'm afraid to not be the tough guy. Or you get the person who their identity was always almost the martyr. I'm always in pain. I'm always hurting, and people feel sorry for me. I'm always a victim of bad things. People come running to my rescue. People give me lots of attention because my life is so difficult. And now they come into recovery and they go, okay, I don't want to be that almost like exploiting people through my trauma person, gaining attention, respect, care through exploiting my trauma. I want to be genuine. I want to give. I want to know there's times I don't need to talk about my pain all the time. There's times I don't need to talk about how rough my life is with people. I need to be able to give a more full picture of my life and not just all the painful, difficult parts. But that's scary. Will anybody give me attention? Will anybody want to help me and be my friend if I change that identity? And then the person who's spent their whole life gaining their identity through their money, through their looks, through their accomplishments, through their possessions, and they're very successful. People look up to them because they're so beautiful, they're so smart, they're so successful. And now they go, but if I don't work 80 hours a week now, if I don't have the perfect body now, if I don't have the fancy house and car and all of those things now, will people still respect me? They feel caught. The double bind. I don't want to continue like that is, like I used to be, but I'm afraid if I am not that way, then I won't get love and respect. So I'm ready to move on. But if I do move on, then who will I be? And will anybody respect me and want to be with me? So how do you get past that? I think it's important to look at all of the things that you did and not just be negative about it. Oh yeah, I got attention from being the wounded person, or I was this macho person. No, you were surviving. You did it well. It kept you safe. It got you some of your needs met, but you realize it wasn't healthy. It didn't work the way I was wanting it to work to really develop authentic, meaningful relationships and a safe life. So don't just criticize that, but be willing to honor what that child had to do to survive, but be willing to be able to go beyond that and say, what really gains true intimacy, respect, healthy relationships where needs are mutually met is not that old way of coping, but authentic, true connection, being vulnerable, showing all of my emotions, being totally human. That's scary, but that's what I want to aspire to. The next one to me is just such an important one to understand, because I think for many people, when they think of trauma, they go to the responses as fight, flight, or freeze. And there's no denying that those are three key aspects of how people respond when they're in danger. But I think the most common but least understood is the fourth F, which is fawning. So it's the child that couldn't fight, couldn't flee. They did freeze, but yet they still needed these parents to meet their needs. So they couldn't just remain frozen. They had to learn to people please. They had to learn to read other people's moods, their needs, their wishes, their opinions. They had to learn to adapt to become what these people wanted them to be in order to get their needs met still. So they're frozen, but yet they're people pleasing. They're being a straight A student, a hero child, a comedian child. They're becoming codependent, all of the different things that they have to do in order to get their parents to like them, in order to get their parents to meet some of their needs. And so fawning becomes almost universal in some shade of fawning for people with complex trauma. You had to learn to wear masks, to be a chameleon, to people please to an extent, to read other people, to suppress your needs and take care of their needs in order to hopefully get your needs met. That was the only thing that kept you safe. It was the only thing that worked, that got you some love, that helped you earn love, that helped you get some of your needs met. So fawning is this very subtle, but it was so common for people with complex trauma. What people don't often realize is fawning worked really well to keep them safe, but it doesn't work well today in intimate relationships, because now they're out taking care of people pleasing everybody else, their boss, people in the different neighborhood, and the different organizations they're part of, but they're not people pleasing their wife or their husband or their children. Those are getting neglected because they got to make sure everybody else likes them. And so their intimate relationships suffer the most. They're starting to be damaged by this fawning thing. And then within their intimate relationship, so let's say the husband just adapting to what their wife wants. They're fixing their wife's moods. They're suppressing their own needs to take care of their wife. And their wife is starting to get frustrated, like, you're not authentic. You're not emotionally available. You're not telling me what you want, what you need, what you think. You're just constantly reflecting what I want, what I think. And I'm not happy with this relationship. This is not a relationship of equals. And so it just starts breaking down all across the board in all parts of life. But to give up fawning, to start being authentic and going into a relationship and say, I am an equal. I will express on day one my needs. I will set boundaries. How could I do that? That might turn them off. That might make them not like me. Fawning is so deeply ingrained for people that to give it up creates this double bind, a crisis, that my world will fall apart. I will be all alone. Nobody will love me. Nobody will meet my needs if I don't fawn. But to learn how to care for others genuinely without it being a fawning response is also a very, very difficult thing. So I'm planning to do a whole series around fawning, because to me it's such an important aspect of getting healthy, understanding trauma responses, and the very, very subtle ways that it infiltrates people's lives. and still is there today in an insidious way. So we'll just say this for now. Practical steps that you can begin to take to deal with fawning is, so a fawner learns the other person's needs first and isn't aware of their own needs. So start learning your own needs. Start learning where your responsibility ends, so where you end and the other person begins. So I'm responsible for my needs. You're responsible for your needs. I end here. I'm not responsible to take care of your needs. That's your responsibility. There'll be times I support you, times I might help you, but here's where I end, you begin, and develop a clear sense of what is mine and what is theirs. And then begin to learn that connection doesn't mean enmeshment. Connection and love still has boundaries. So I care for you. I'm connecting with you. But that does not mean I take on your stuff. That does not mean that I do your stuff for you. I can still be connected, but detach to a degree emotionally and just be supportive and let you sit in your stuff and work through your stuff. That is such an important but difficult, challenging skill to learn. Then learn to express your needs. Learn to express your opinions. Learn to say no and set boundaries. All of those things become such important tools in beginning to move out of the fawning response. The next double bind is around chaos. So for many people in complex trauma, they were born in chaos. Their life was unpredictable. They didn't know one day whether their dad would be mad or happy. They didn't know if they're going to get beat up or played with in a nice way. They didn't know what to expect. Their house was left a mess. Things were not done. Promises weren't kept. There was just chaos, chaos, chaos. That was their normal. And so what happened with all of that is they learned to hate chaos because they just saw the damage it did. They just saw all the problems that came with the chaos, but it was their normal. It's like they needed chaos to feel normal. If they didn't have chaos, life felt boring. The other part of chaos was as long as there was chaos, they could rush in and try to fix it, and that would make them useful, and that would get them validation. But when there was no chaos, there's nothing to fix. They didn't get validation. They then had to focus on themselves. But if there's chaos, it took the focus off themselves, put it on other things, and they didn't have to think about their own emotions and their own problems and what they needed to change. They just focused on what others needed to change. So chaos had a bunch of different purposes and realities in their life that now there's a whole bunch of different double binds that happen when they move to a life without chaos. Let me just add another thing that happens for a lot of kids that grow up in complex trauma, and that is they can't resolve any of the painful emotions that they're going through. Can't resolve their pain. They can't resolve their anger, their hurts. So they stuff, because if they express it, they get punished, they get judged. And so they just learn to shut down emotions, stuff emotions, cut themselves off from their emotions because they can't do anything about it. And who needs to live with that constant pain in their life? But shutting down emotions makes them feel very dead. It makes them feel very robotic. Life is dull. Life has no sense of excitement. And so they begin to learn, if I create chaos, it makes me feel alive. If I create chaos, it just gets the blood going. It gets some adrenaline going. It's exciting. I love this chaos. So I hate chaos, but I love chaos. And then they get into adult life, and all of a sudden they realize, boy, when I live in this chaos and I need chaos to feel alive, it's damaging me. It's damaging relationships. It's leading to a life where I'm getting fired from jobs, where people are getting frustrated with me and setting boundaries with me and ending relationships with me. I need to get to a life that has some routine, that has some healthy habits, that has a daily set of practices that keep me healthy and keep me growing. And so they start to do that, but then that starts to feel boring. That starts to feel, oh, this is kind of dull. I need to spruce it up. I need to have some excitement. And so they hate chaos, but there's almost like an addiction. I need to create drama to start to feel alive again. I need to go back to the thing that I hate because it's the only tool I have to cope with life. And it feels kind of normal. And so a double bind, again, around chaos. So what helps to kind of move beyond that? What I think a lot of people do is just focus on kind of external symptoms. How do I get more organized? How do I have a better routine? And that's important, but you got to start deep and you got to reconnect to emotion. You got to reconnect to all of the stuff that you've suppressed. And at first that's going to be connecting to some pain, but you're also going to begin gradually to connect to more and more joy, more and more peace, more and more contentment, more and more positive stuff. That's tough work, but important work. Then you have to stick to a routine that's healthy, even when you go, oh, okay, this has made some good changes. I guess I don't need to do it anymore. No, keep doing it, because if you stop doing it, you'll regress. And understand that doing this routine was not just to get healthy and then I'm fixed. This is to get healthy and keep growing. But more than that, once it gets boring, your limbic brain is triggered and it wants to go to chaos. But get out of your limbic brain and go, no, I'm going to keep doing this even though it feels boring because I know it's healthy. And I'm going to keep doing it until there's a certain amount of joy and pleasure that comes from doing this daily routine, and that will come. And so find routines that are somewhat enjoyable. Don't just do stuff that isn't you. Learn to do healthy things that meet all your 12 needs that are enjoyable to you. Now, there always will be elements that are hard work and that might not be enjoyable that you just need to do in order to meet your needs. But find as much enjoyment and enjoyable activities for meeting your needs as possible. The next one to me is so significant. When you're bored, your brain goes back to an old script that says you need chaos, you need excitement. Usually what you need when you're bored is connection. Connection to yourself, to your emotions, to what's going on inside of you, and connection to others. That's what leads to the positive emotions. That's a key need that needs to be met. So when you're bored, seek connection, not chaos. And then learn to find healthy, enjoyable activities that fill up your fun pot, that fill up your pleasures. Often in survival, you're so busy surviving, you don't have time to enjoy life. You don't have time to develop hobbies that you enjoy, to go for walks in nature, to just go to a concert that feeds your soul. Learn those kind of things that are just balancing some of the hard, difficult parts of recovery with some really enjoyable things that go, okay, I'm starting to find a healthy life that is meaningful. I don't need chaos. I can get to very positive, feeling alive through different tools that are much more healthy. The final one I want to talk about today is the double bind that comes around abandonment. So what happens to a child who's abused or neglected is I can't connect with the two significant people in my life the way I want to. Doesn't feel like they want to connect with me. Must be something wrong with me. And so the child feels alone. They feel abandoned. So the people might be in the same house with them. They might be physically there, but they don't feel there's an emotional connection. So they feel abandonment. And then the child goes, well, I guess it's because I'm terrible, so I don't like me, so they abandon themselves. But what happens with that is they then realize that one of the most painful emotions in the world is to be abandoned. You feel like a zero. You feel like nobody wants you, that nobody likes you at all. It's an awful, awful feeling. And so what comes out of that is, I never want to be abandoned again. So they come into adult life with basically this belief: I've been abandoned, it's because of me. Anybody that gets to see me and know me will reject me and abandon me. But I never want to be abandoned again. So I have to make sure people don't get to see the real me and don't abandon me. So they go into adult relationships determined not to be authentic, trying to fawn, not emotionally available to people, doing all kinds of things to try to make the relationship feel connected. Lots of sex, lots of gifts, lots of activities together. And they hope that's going to create this sense of we're connected, but it starts to drift. The other person isn't satisfied because there's no true connection happening. And they start to feel a gap between the other person, and they start to panic. I'm being abandoned. They're starting to see the real me. They're going to leave me. And then they go to all kinds of little games. They become super needy. They become super controlling. They become critical of the other person. They become fawning all over again. They give tests to the other person. All of those things to try to keep the person from abandoning them. And then they become super sensitive to all the things the other person does. So, they didn't give me 100% attention today when I was talking. I guess they're planning to abandon me. They gave me some advice or they criticized something I did. I guess they don't like me. They're planning to abandon me. And now they're reading disrespect into everything. They think I'm stupid. They're thinking they don't see me. They're reading that into everything. And they're just building in their mind, this person's ready to abandon me. And then they've got all of this deep, deep shame that came out of being neglected and abused as a child and believing they must be a zero. And so now whenever anything happens that triggers their shame, where they don't feel good enough, immediately their brain goes, okay, I'm going to get abandoned. So this abandonment is a haunting part of their story that's always there. It's in the background. It might be in the subconscious, but it is massive. And so this person now fears abandonment, but to get healthy, people might leave them. To get healthy, they might have to set boundaries. They might have to not be so needy. They might have to not be people-pleasing, not fawning. And they go, but then I'll be abandoned. So where do you go with this? This is such a big issue for so many people. Start with the core stuff again. Heal your shame. Stop abandoning yourself. Learn to connect with yourself. Learn to be okay with who you are, to accept yourself. Secondly, begin to build authentic, genuine connection with safe people. That's scary. That makes you afraid you're going to be abandoned because they're going to see the real you. But as you do it gradually, you begin to go, they got to see the real me and they didn't abandon me. And you begin to kind of rewrite some of the faulty programming in your mind. And then whenever your abandonment wound gets triggered and you become dysregulated and go to fear and they're going to abandon me, and you go to worst case scenario and you want to lash out at everybody and want to control everybody, get out of your limbic brain, regulate your emotional world, get into your cortex and be able to think this through and go, okay, here's what happened. Here's where my limbic brain went. But what's the reality? Okay, they didn't give me 100% attention today because they had a problem at work. That doesn't mean they're going to abandon me. That just means they're human. They're having a tough day. Let's look at the rest of the last month. Man, they gave me 100% attention most of the time. So don't take one little event and blow it out of proportion. Look at the big picture and all the evidence. And then the final thing that helps many people with abandonment wounds is internal family systems work or parts work or inner child work, whatever you want to call it, where you begin to really understand that wounded part of you that feels all alone, that feels abandoned, and you learn how to help that part heal, to look at all the parts that are trying to protect that part and work with them so that they're able to give up some of their maladaptive strategies. That again is slow work. It is deep work, but it leads to some wonderful healing for people. So 5 more double binds that many people face in recovery. You might relate to every one of these. I hope what I've shared as far as moving forward will give you some practical tools to help. There's other videos on these topics that go into more detail, but I just want you to hear that you're not alone. If you're going through this is common. This is what most people go through. But there are practical things you can do to start moving through. So thanks for listening. If this was helpful, please like, subscribe, share, comment. We really appreciate it. See you next time.